The call. What if 5 ordinary words could save a life? Not "I love you." Not "please help me." Not even "call 911." Just 5 words that sound like nothing, and mean everything. Do you sell sugar? Stay with me. Because what you're about to hear is not just a story. It is a mirror held up to the parts of life most people never see, and never talk about. A story about the kind of love that doesn't announce itself. The kind that waits, quietly, in a phone number saved in a child's memory, ready for the night it's finally needed. The man who answered. His name was Cormac Bellwether. Most people never knew his first name. They knew him only by the way he entered a room, quietly, deliberately, like a man who had long ago made peace with the fact that the loudest person in any space is rarely the most powerful. He was a man who measured words the way a surgeon measures incisions. Precisely. With intention. Never more than necessary. He was somewhere in his 50s. Silver at the temples, dark circles beneath eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. He lived alone in a house that was too large for one person, in a city that never stopped moving, and he kept the machinery of that life running with the help of a small, quiet circle of people he trusted completely. Trust, for Cormac Bellwether, was not a feeling. It was a calculation. A slow, careful math done over months and years, watching the distance between what someone said and what they did. Counting the small consistencies. Noting the moments when a person could have looked away and didn't. He had trusted very few people in his life. Giovanna Morrow was one of them. The woman he never forgot. She wasn't extraordinary in the way that gets noticed. She didn't fill rooms with her presence. She didn't tell stories that made people lean forward. She was quiet. Methodical. She arrived at his home every morning at 6 o'clock before the house had fully woken up, and she moved through its rooms the way water moves through a riverbed. Naturally. Without disturbing anything. Shaping it gently over time in ways that nobody ever noticed. She made his coffee strong, black, 1 sugar, in the ceramic mug with the chip on the handle that he refused to replace. She learned this in the first week, by watching, and she never forgot. She organized his shelves so that every book, every file, every small object returned to its place as if drawn there by gravity. She noticed when a light bulb was beginning to dim before it burned out. She noticed when the silence in the house shifted from peaceful to heavy, and on those days, she left a glass of water on his desk and worked in the far rooms, giving him space he hadn't asked for but needed. She never pried. She never overstepped. She was present the way a foundation is present. Invisible, load-bearing, essential. He trusted her. And when she left, because people always leave eventually, as they should, because no one should build their whole life inside someone else's house, he gave her more than a generous final check and a glowing letter of reference. He gave her a phrase. Something simple enough to remember under fear, in the dark, while shaking. Something innocent enough to say in front of anyone, a stranger, a child, even the man she was leaving with, without raising suspicion. And something specific enough that if those words ever reached his ear, through any phone, at any hour, from any number, he would know exactly what they meant. If you ever need me. He told her, quietly, without decoration. Call this number and say 5 words. Do you sell sugar? That's all you need to say. I'll understand everything else. Giovanna had looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes glistened, not quite tears, but the wetness that comes when you realize someone has just given you something you didn't know you needed. I won't need it. She said. I hope you don't. He replied. That was 4 years ago. The call. The phone rang at 12:47 a.m. Unknown number. Virginia area code. The kind of call that is probably nothing, a wrong dial, a robocle cycling through the graveyard shift. His thumb hovered over the red button. A reflex built from years of careful living. From the understanding that attention is currency, and you don't spend it on strangers. Then he answered. Not out of curiosity. Out of habit. Because Cormac Bellwether had learned long ago that the calls you ignore are the ones that come back heavier. Silence. Not dead air. Not the mechanical emptiness of a dropped signal. This silence had texture. It breathed, but it trembled at the edges. The way a room trembles when someone inside it is trying very hard not to make a sound. There was a hum beneath it. The hum of a house at night. Of pipes and appliances. Of a building where someone was awake who shouldn't be. Then, a voice. Small. Barely louder than breathing. The kind of voice that comes from a mouth pressed too close to a phone, from someone who understood that volume is dangerous. Do you sell sugar? Cormac's hand stopped moving. His jaw tightened, not visibly, not to anyone watching, but somewhere deep inside the architecture of his face, behind the controlled expression he wore like other men wear armor. A wall went up and a door opened at the same time. Because that sentence didn't belong to a child. That sentence belonged to a warning. And when a child uses a warning meant for adults, when a voice that small carries a phrase that heavy, it means someone taught her. It means someone sat her down and gave her words to use when everything else had failed. It means a mother somewhere, at some desperate and clear-eyed moment, decided that her child needed an escape route that didn't require running. It wasn't Giovanna's voice on the line. It was her daughter's. An 8-year-old girl. Hiding somewhere in a house. Whispering a code phrase into a phone at 1 o'clock in the morning. A code phrase she had been taught to memorize, to practice, to use only when it got bad enough. How much sugar do you need? He asked, his voice even, calm, a hand extended across the darkness. A pause. He could hear her swallow. Then. A lot. And my mom is crying. Cormac closed his eyes. Just for a second. Behind his lids, he saw Giovanna's face. The way she looked the day she left, standing in his kitchen, hands folded, full of quiet hope about starting over. Full of the particular optimism that belongs to people who believe that leaving is the same as arriving. Now this. Now her daughter. Hiding in the dark. Using words she'd been rehearsed to use, because Giovanna had known. She had sat this child down and prepared her. Not with vague instructions, not with a general plea to call for help. A drill. A specific, repeatable drill. The kind that works under stress because it doesn't require thinking, only remembering. She made me practice. The girl would tell him later. We practiced 3 times. Those 4 words were the most devastating thing Cormac would hear all night. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were quiet. Matter of fact. The voice of a child who understood, without anyone telling her explicitly, that the emergency was not hypothetical. It was inevitable. What's your name? He asked. A small hitch. As if the question surprised her. Sable. The name settled into his ear like velvet. An unusual name. The kind a mother gives when she wants her child to carry something beautiful, something that means more than it says. A name like shadow and softness and small surviving things. Sable, you're doing very well. I need you to listen to me. And in the background, a door. Not closing. Slamming. The kind that doesn't happen by accident. The kind that is a message delivered in the language of architecture, that says, I own this space. Every surface in this house is an extension of my hands, and I can make any of them violent whenever I choose. Sable's breathing changed. Got thinner. Tighter. The sound of lungs trying to become invisible. The sound of a child who had practiced being small. And Cormac Bellwether was already reaching for his keys. What happens when he gets there? Black down arrow hash. He kept Sable on the line. The phone sat in its cradle on the dashboard, the connection open, her small breathing a quiet, steady presence in the car like a second heartbeat, fragile and determined. With his other hand, he dialed 911 on a clean prepaid he kept in the glove compartment, replaced monthly, never used for anything except moments exactly like this. When the dispatcher answered, his voice was flat. Precise. Stripped of everything except utility. I'm reporting a domestic disturbance. The address is 1847, Millbrook Lane, Unit B, Woodbridge, Virginia. There is a woman being assaulted. A minor child is present and in contact with me by phone. The aggressor is an adult male, likely intoxicated. Please send officers immediately. The dispatcher asked for his name. That's not relevant right now. He said. What's relevant is the address and the child. She's still on the line with me. Send someone. He hung up. The call was now logged. It existed in a system. It had a timestamp, a recording, a case number. That mattered. That was the first brick in a wall of documentation that needed to be built, one brick at a time, starting now. Back on the primary line. Sable's breathing had evened slightly. The immediate thunder had passed. The house had settled into that tense, fragile equilibrium that follows a violent episode. The equilibrium that feels like peace, but isn't. That is only the space between one bad thing and the next. Sable, is your mom awake? Can you hear her? I think so. She was crying before. Now she's quiet. Quiet. That word sat in Cormac's chest like a stone dropped into still water. Quiet after violence could mean so many things. Exhaustion. Shock. Dissociation. Or worse. Much worse. Can you hear her? Even a little. A pause. He could almost see Sable, crouched on a bathroom floor, her ear tilted toward the gap at the bottom of the door, sorting the sounds of the house into categories. Safe sounds. Dangerous sounds. She's in the kitchen. I can hear the water running. She paused. She does that. She runs the water after. 6 words. And each one landed like a blow. Cormac's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He knew what running water meant. It meant standing at a sink with the faucet on full, pressing a wet cloth to a swelling face. It meant washing blood off a lip or a countertop before your child could see it in the morning. It meant creating a wall of white noise, a barrier of water sound that muffled crying, that covered the specific acoustics of a woman trying to pull herself back together in a kitchen where the broken glass hadn't been swept up yet. He knew. Because his mother used to run the water too. Different house. Different decade. Different man doing the hitting. Same water. Same sink. Same sound. The sound of a woman erasing the evidence, not for the police, not for the courts, but for her own child. The sound of a mother rebuilding the illusion that everything was fine before her daughter woke up and saw the truth written on her face. That sound was in his blood. It was the first sound he remembered from childhood. Not a lullaby. Not a story. Water running at 2 in the morning. And his mother's voice, muffled and raw, saying to herself, "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay." He pressed the accelerator. The arrival. 1847, Millbrook Lane was a ground-floor unit in a beige apartment complex that looked like every other beige apartment complex in the suburban sprawl of Northern Virginia. 2 stories. Outdoor staircases with wrought iron railings painted and repainted so many times the metal underneath had become a geological record of choices. A parking lot with faded lines and 1 broken streetlight casting a dying orange cone over a dumpster and 3 parked sedans. The kind of place where people lived not because they'd chosen it, but because it was what they could afford. And affordability has a way of making decisions for you. Cormac parked across the street. He sat in the car for 30 seconds. Not hesitating. Calibrating. Running variables the way he ran every difficult situation. Entry points, exits, unknowns, contingencies. He was not a man who walked into rooms unprepared. Then, into the phone, one last time. Sable. I'm here. I'm outside. Stay exactly where you are. Don't come out of the bathroom. Don't unlock the door for anyone except your mother or me. Do you understand? Yes. Good girl. I'm going to hang up now. It's going to be quiet for a few minutes. A breath. Don't be scared of the quiet. I'm coming. He ended the call. He got out of the car. The air was cold, February in Virginia, damp and patient, the kind that doesn't assault you but infiltrates you, working its way into fabric and skin and settling in your joints like it intends to stay. He walked across the lot with his hands visible. No coat. No weapon. Nothing concealed. Just a man in dark clothes crossing a parking lot at 1:30 in the morning, walking with the measured stride of someone who was neither rushing nor dawdling. He knew he was visible. That was the point. Through the thin beige curtain, because everything in this complex was beige, he could see the blue glow of a television. He could smell stale cigarettes, fried oil, and beneath it all, seeping through the doorframe like a confession, the sharp chemical tang of cheap bourbon. Hours old. The smell of a man who had been drinking since dinner and was now operating in that particular twilight between drunk and sober, where inhibitions are low and reactions are unpredictable. Cormac knocked. 3 knocks. Measured. Evenly spaced. The kind of knock that carries a message: I am here. I am deliberate. And I am not going away. The door opens. The man in the doorway was tall, but soft. The build of someone who had once been athletic and was now subsisting on the memory of strength. Broad shoulders that sloped. Thick forearms that were more mass than muscle. He had a broad face, thinning hair combed optimistically to one side in a way that fooled no one, and small eyes that were working very hard to look sober. The eyes were the giveaway. Wet. Slightly unfocused. The eyes of someone 3/4 into a bottle, running on the remaining quarter of will. Also, Cormac noted without expression, the knuckles of the man's right hand were red. Slightly swollen. And behind him, on the kitchen floor, broken glass caught the overhead light in tiny scattered reflections. Each one a small, sharp witness. Can I help you? Delivered with practiced confusion. The tone of an innocent man bothered by a late-night stranger. Almost convincing. Everything's fine here, buddy. You got the wrong address. Buddy. The word landed with the casual aggression of a man who uses friendliness as a fence. Stay on your side. I'm on mine. Cormac didn't speak yet. He looked past the man's shoulder, past the cluttered living room, past the television's blue glow, down the hallway, into the kitchen. Giovanna was standing in the kitchen doorway. He almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked physically different, though she did, slightly. Thinner. The kind of thinness that doesn't come from diet, but from a body's slow response to sustained stress. The way a plant thins when it doesn't get enough light. Her hair was pulled back in a way that looked hasty, not intentional. She wore a sweatshirt too large for her, his, probably, and leggings, and her feet were bare on the linoleum. But it wasn't the physical changes that made her almost unrecognizable. It was the way she was standing. 4 years ago, Giovanna Morrow had stood in his kitchen with her hands folded in front of her, centered, still, the posture of someone who believed that good things were ahead of her. Full of quiet hope. Full of the particular optimism that belongs to people who believe that leaving is the same as arriving. Now she stood in the doorway of a different kitchen, one hand against the wall, the other hanging at her side, and she looked like a woman who had been slowly hollowed out from the inside. Like someone had taken the architecture of the person she used to be and removed the load-bearing beams, one by one, over months and years, until what remained was still standing, but only just. Her eyes found his. And something in them, something deep beneath the exhaustion and the fear and the long-practiced blankness of a woman who had learned to disappear inside herself, something cracked open. Recognition. And beneath it, relief so profound it looked almost like grief. He had come. She had told her daughter to call a number she hadn't dialed in 4 years, to say words to a man her daughter had never met, and she had trusted, with everything she had left to trust with, that he would answer. And he had. The ending. Cormac looked at the man in the doorway. Calm. Still. Unmoved. I'm not at the wrong address. He said quietly. I know the woman behind you. And I know her daughter, who is currently locked in your bathroom, frightened, because she was taught a long time ago what to do when things get bad enough. He paused. They got bad enough tonight. The man opened his mouth. Closed it. The calculation behind his eyes shifted, recalculating, because this was not the script he expected. Cormac was not aggressive. He was not loud. He did not raise his voice or threaten or reach for anything. He simply stood there, in the cold February air, with the quiet and absolute presence of a man who had made a decision and was not going to unmake it. Blue and red lights appeared at the end of the parking lot. 2 police cruisers, moving without sirens but with purpose. The man in the doorway saw them. Something collapsed in his face. Not guilt, not shame, but the particular deflation of someone who has suddenly run out of room. Cormac stepped aside. Let the officers come. Gave his statement clearly, specifically, without embellishment. Gave them the timeline, the phone call, the child's voice, the 911 log. He had documented everything that could be documented. When the officers entered the apartment, Giovanna finally moved. She walked toward the hallway, slowly, as if her body had forgotten how to move without caution, and knocked once on the bathroom door. "Sable. It's me. You can open it now." A moment of silence. Then the soft click of a lock being turned. The door opened. Sable was 8 years old and small for her age, with her mother's eyes and the careful stillness of a child who had spent too long learning to be quiet. She looked at Giovanna first, checking, assessing, reading her face the way children learn to read their parents' faces when they've been raised in uncertain homes. Looking for the signs that told her what kind of night this had been. What the damage was. What she needed to hold together. Then she looked past her mother. At Cormac. He nodded once. Nothing dramatic. Just acknowledgement. "I heard you. I came." She nodded back. Something very adult in that small gesture. Something no child should have to carry. Giovanna held her daughter for a long time in the hallway. Neither of them made a sound. Cormac waited, near the door, out of the way, watching the parking lot where the blue and red lights still spun their quiet, indifferent circles. Later, much later, after the statements had been given and the paperwork had begun and the man who had been slamming doors was somewhere in the back of a cruiser, Giovanna came and stood beside him. She didn't look at him at first. Just stood, looking at the parking lot, hands wrapped around a mug of tea someone had made her. "I almost didn't give her the number," she said finally. "I almost thought it was dramatic. That things would get better. That I was overreacting." Cormac was quiet for a moment. "You weren't overreacting," he said. "No. I know that now." She looked at him then. And the expression on her face was something Cormac had no word for, not quite gratitude, not quite sorrow. Something older than both of those. The expression of a person who has survived a thing they weren't sure they'd survive, who is standing on the other side of it, and who is trying to understand what standing looks like when you've been bent for so long. She remembered the words. Giovanna said, "Every single one." Cormac looked toward the apartment where, through the bathroom doorway, he could see Sable sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, holding her mother's phone and looking at nothing in particular with the quiet, thousand-yard composure of a child processing what her childhood had required of her. "Yes," he said. "She did." And that was the most important thing either of them said all night. The life lesson. This story is not just about a midnight phone call. It is not just about a man who drove through the dark to a stranger's apartment, or a woman running water at 2 in the morning to hide the evidence of a life that had gone wrong. It is about the quiet architecture of care. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that doesn't wait to be thanked. The kind that sits in a phone number memorized by a child, ready for the night it's finally needed. Cormac Bellwether did not give Giovanna Morrow money or advice or a plan. He gave her something rarer and more lasting, a promise. And he kept it, at 12:47 in the morning, in February, without anyone asking him to. Giovanna did not give her daughter a speech about danger or a lesson about fear. She gave her a script, a phone number, and the knowledge that no matter how bad the night got, someone was on the other end of that line who would answer. And Sable, little Sable, 8 years old with her mother's eyes and the quiet, terrible competence of a child who had learned to survive, she did the thing she was taught to do. She remembered every word. She stayed calm. She kept talking. 3 people. 3 forms of quiet courage. The lesson. The most powerful thing you can give another person is not money. Not advice. Not your opinion on what they should do with their life. It is the certainty, real, demonstrated, kept in the dark at midnight certainty, that if they ever truly need you, you will answer. And sometimes the most important preparation you can make for the people you love is not optimism, not things will get better or don't worry. It is a plan. A quiet, practical, rehearsed plan for what to do when things don't get better. Because hope is beautiful. But a phone number, memorized, tested, kept, can save a life that hope alone could not. Be the kind of person who answers at 12:47 a.m. And if you love someone, really love them, make sure they have a number like that in their memory. A number that belongs to someone who will understand everything from a sentence that sounds like nothing.